Every time you post, someone takes notes. Not everyone who claps is cheering for you. Some are just blending in, waiting quietly for your guard to drop. We live in a world where being seen feels like winning. So we perform, we flaunt, we overshare. We chase followers like they're proof we matter. Because the more visible we are, the more valuable we believe we become. But what if that belief is a lie? What if attention isn't power, but a spotlight on your weakness? What if visibility is the first step toward your destruction? Because behind every like, every view, every compliment, there are eyes watching, some admiring, some comparing, and some calculating exactly when to pull you down. There's always that one person, quiet, polite, seemingly forgettable. They don't brag, they don't post, they don't compete for the spotlight. You barely notice them until suddenly they own the room. They rise without warning. They move in silence. And by the time you realize what happened, the loudest voices have vanished. The ones who begged to be seen, gone. The ones who stayed invisible, they're in charge. Later in this video, we'll break down exactly how the most powerful people protect themselves, how they move without being seen, how they win without ever needing validation. If you've ever felt drained by the need to perform or wondered how to succeed without being loud, stay with me, because what comes next could completely change how you play the game. We live in a time where showing off isn't just normalized, it's celebrated. The more you flaunt, the more you're rewarded. Flash your wealth, flash your abs, flash your relationship, your car, your vacation, your rise and grind hustle. It's all part of the game. The algorithm feeds on vanity and the crowd applauds it. Look at influencers, clout chasers, self-made gurus with rented Lamborghinis and digital success stories carefully crafted in 30-second reels. The performance is polished, addictive, and everywhere. But behind that performance lies something deeper, something older, something wired into us. Humans crave recognition. We're built for it. In prehistoric times, being admired meant being protected. Being seen meant belonging, and being respected meant survival. But today, admiration is sold by the pixel. And the more we seek it, the more we distort ourselves. We don't chase excellence, we chase attention. The result? A society addicted to showing off, addicted to proving, addicted to looking powerful instead of being powerful. We've built an entire culture around perceived power. But perceived power is fragile. It depends on audience approval, on external validation. It can be taken away, canceled, criticized, ignored. Real power? Real power doesn't beg to be seen. It doesn't need applause to exist. It doesn't tremble in silence. In fact, it thrives in it. The people who truly pull strings don't flaunt it. They don't show you their moves. They don't post every step of their journey. They don't compete for followers or approval. They operate in the background, behind closed doors, building quietly, winning slowly, and striking only when necessary. That's the difference Machiavelli saw centuries ago. The illusion of power is a costume. The reality of power is invisible. But in a world where everyone's trying to be seen, invisibility becomes the ultimate advantage. And maybe the greatest trick power ever pulled was convincing people it needed to be visible. Niccolo Machiavelli was not just a political thinker, he was a psychologist of power long before psychology had a name. In The Prince, his most chilling and often misunderstood advice is this: never outshine the master. At first glance, it sounds manipulative, maybe even cowardly, but beneath it lies a dark, unspoken truth about human nature, one we ignore at our own risk. People in power are rarely as secure as they appear. No matter how confident, how charismatic, how beloved, they all carry a fear. The fear of being replaced, of being overshadowed, of losing control. And when someone under them, someone younger, smarter, more capable, starts to shine too brightly, that fear wakes up. It doesn't matter if your intentions are pure. It doesn't matter if you're loyal. If your light starts to challenge theirs, even unintentionally, they will feel threatened. And they will find a way to dim you. This isn't just a historical theory. It happens every day. The intern who's too enthusiastic and suddenly gets left out of meetings. The rising star in a company who's praised by everyone, except their boss. The gifted student who unintentionally makes their professor feel obsolete. The friend who starts leveling up and finds their old circle growing cold. Shining too brightly too soon disrupts the hierarchy, and most people will protect their position more fiercely than they protect the truth. History is full of examples. Julius Caesar was stabbed by those he trusted. Jesus was crucified by the very people he came to uplift. Even Martin Luther King Jr., whose dream was peace, was seen as too disruptive, too influential, too much. The pattern is always the same. Stand out too quickly and you become a threat. It happens online too. Cancel culture isn't just about calling out bad behavior. Often it's about bringing someone down because they rose too fast, because they dared to be exceptional, and in doing so, reminded others of what they're not. Jealousy wears many disguises: morality, justice, critique. But underneath is often a quiet whisper: how dare you rise without me? Machiavelli didn't say never shine. He said never outshine the master. Know the room, know the egos. Know the emotional temperature before you light your fire. Because not everyone wants to see you win, and some will burn you for even trying. This truth is uncomfortable but liberating. It forces us to move wisely, to see human nature not as we wish it were, but as it is. If you want to survive in a world ruled by insecure masters, you must learn the art of restraint. Because sometimes the brightest minds must dim their light, not out of weakness, but strategy. Not forever, just long enough to pass unseen. Until the moment comes when no one can stop them. Envy is quiet. It doesn't shout like anger. It doesn't weep like sadness. It lingers, smiles, waits, and then strikes. You've felt it. Maybe not from a stranger, but from someone close, a friend, a colleague, a family member. You achieve something, a new job, a better relationship, even a moment of joy. And instead of celebration, they grew distant, cold, passive-aggressive. The texts slowed down, the compliments stopped, the support disappeared. Envy isn't always obvious. It doesn't wear a villain's face. It often wears the mask of politeness. But behind the smile is a question they'll never say aloud. Why you? Why not me? In psychology, there's a theory called social comparison. We measure our worth not in absolute terms, but relative to others. We look sideways at peers, friends, classmates, coworkers, and silently rank ourselves. The moment someone near us rises too fast, it destabilizes our identity. It threatens our sense of control. And when that person shows it off, intentionally or not, it's gasoline on an already burning fire. That's when envy mutates into sabotage. There's a coworker, always pleasant, always supportive, until they start taking credit for your ideas in meetings. They never outright attack, but they subtly erode your reputation, one whisper at a time. Or a friend you grew up with. You thought they'd always root for you, but after your success, they stop laughing at your jokes. They stop returning your calls. You didn't become arrogant. They just couldn't stomach the distance your growth created. And the worst part? You didn't do anything wrong. You simply existed. You became a mirror, reflecting back what others don't want to see in themselves. And mirrors are rarely welcomed. What social media has done is put this phenomenon on steroids. Every post is a performance. Every win is an announcement. Every milestone is framed for consumption. But with every flex, you risk waking sleeping demons. Jealousy, inadequacy, resentment. People don't just scroll past your success. They feel it. And many don't process it healthily. They internalize it as their failure. Then they retaliate, not directly, but subtly, emotionally, socially. Because not everyone wants to see you win. Many only wanted to see you with them. The moment you rise without permission, without apology, without them, you become a threat. This isn't about paranoia, it's about awareness. When you show off, you're not just broadcasting your success, you're triggering insecurities you can't see. And in a world built on fragile egos, that can cost you more than you think. Sometimes the real reason people turn on you isn't because you changed, it's because you didn't dim your light to protect their shadow. Power doesn't always look like power. It doesn't always wear a suit. It doesn't always speak loudly. And it almost never seeks applause. In fact, the people who hold the most power often look like they hold the least. They walk past you unnoticed. They don't flash wealth, titles, or influence. And that's exactly what makes them dangerous. Because they understand something most don't. In a world obsessed with visibility, invisibility is a weapon. Warren Buffett lives in a modest house he bought in 1958. He doesn't dress like a billionaire, doesn't act like one. He doesn't show off private jets, yachts, or watches. But behind that image of a gentle grandfather lies one of the most powerful financial minds in modern history. Then there are the underground billionaires, the ones not listed on Forbes, who don't attend galas, who don't care for status. They own infrastructure, data centers, oil. They make decisions that ripple across continents yet remain completely off your radar. Or think about whistleblowers, the anonymous truth-tellers who expose empires and shake governments. They don't crave followers, they crave impact. And they understand that being seen too early means being silenced too soon. What these people have mastered is psychological stealth. They know that when you appear unthreatening, people ignore you. And when people ignore you, you gain freedom. Freedom to move, to think, to build without resistance. When you're underestimated, you're protected. People reveal things in front of you. They let their guard down. They overlook your influence. And by the time they realize who you really are, it's already too late. This isn't weakness, it's strategic invisibility. It's the art of appearing average while building quietly in the background. It's choosing silence over performance, patience over pressure, power over attention. Think of it like this. Lions don't need to announce they're lions. They move in silence and strike only when it matters. But the peacocks, the ones who scream for attention, are the first to be hunted. The most visible is often the most vulnerable. Society trains us to seek visibility, to brand ourselves, to promote, perform, project. But what if you stopped performing and started observing? What would happen if you didn't react to everything? Didn't explain yourself? Didn't post every win? What would happen if your power didn't come from how much people see, but how little they suspect? In a world of overexposure, privacy is power. In a room full of noise, silence is strategy. And sometimes the smartest move you can make is to keep them guessing. Because the moment they think they figured you out is the moment you've already moved 3 steps ahead. Social media didn't invent showing off, but it turned it into an economy. Every platform is now a stage. Every post, a performance. Every like, a microdose of validation. We've trained ourselves to believe that if it isn't posted, it didn't happen. If it doesn't get attention, it wasn't worth doing. We broadcast everything, our meals, our outfits, our vacations, our opinions, our emotions. Not because we need to, but because we've been conditioned to seek visibility. Constantly, the algorithm rewards attention, but it punishes authenticity. It trains us to optimize our lives not for depth, but for engagement. To create bite-sized, polished versions of our identity that can survive the scroll. And so we overshare. We reveal too much, too fast, too publicly. We show our victories before they've fully formed. We confess things that aren't healed. We expose moves that should have stayed quiet. And for a moment, we feel seen, admired, powerful. But behind that temporary high is something darker. Because the more you reveal, the more ammunition you hand to people who don't want to see you rise. Silent judgment, passive resentment, invisible sabotage. It only takes one poorly received post to lose a job, one vulnerable tweet to shift public opinion, one story screenshot to spread through private group chats, one moment of honesty to be used against you in a world that thrives on screenshots, not context. We live in a dopamine feedback loop. Every like triggers the brain's reward system. But over time, the brain becomes desensitized. You need more likes, more applause, more attention just to feel the same. And soon you're not posting to express, You're posting to survive. And in the process, we lose something essential: our privacy, our mystique, our leverage. Machiavelli warned that visibility creates enemies, that power flaunted is power weakened. He couldn't have predicted TikTok or Instagram, but his insight is more relevant now than ever. Because when your life becomes content, your mistakes become permanent, your identity becomes a brand, and your freedom becomes a product you no longer own. The ones watching aren't always cheering. Some are waiting for the right moment to strike, to mock, to cancel, to destroy. The price of attention is exposure, and the more you reveal, the more you risk. Not just your reputation, but your peace. You don't have to disappear, but you have to ask yourself, who benefits from your visibility? Because in this digital coliseum, applause is not always admiration. Sometimes it's just the sound of the crowd, waiting for you to fall. Silence is not weakness, it's not passivity, it's not submission. Silence, when chosen, is strategy. We've spent so long believing that power means being loud, that to matter you must be seen, that to lead you must speak first, move first, post first. But real power, real impact, doesn't need an audience. It needs intention. In a world addicted to noise, the quiet thinker becomes the most dangerous. Being underestimated isn't a curse, it's freedom. It's camouflage. When people assume you're average, they stop watching, they stop guarding, and that gives you space to grow, to study, to sharpen, to build without resistance. This is the principle behind every underdog story that ended in domination. The Stoics knew it well. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but wrote in a journal never meant to be read. He didn't brag, he reflected. He didn't shout, he understood. They believed in virtues, excellence in character, not in performance. That strength lies in restraint, in composure, in stillness. Carl Jung called it shadow work, the process of owning the parts of ourselves we hide, the quiet internal transformation that happens away from the crowd, the hard, slow discipline of confronting your own mind. It doesn't get you likes, it doesn't get you retweets, but it makes you unshakable. This is the blueprint. Private wins, unspoken moves, quiet progress. Not because you're afraid, but because you're focused. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to announce what's coming next. You only need to do the work and let the results whisper for you. Because whispers travel further than screams when the world finally stops shouting. Strategic patience is your ally. Not everything needs to happen now. Not everything needs to be shared now. Sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is wait. Not because you're weak, but because you're planning 10 moves ahead while everyone else is chasing instant applause. Humility then becomes rebellion. Discretion becomes defiance. Silence becomes your shield and your sword. The next time you feel the urge to post your plan, pause. The next time you want to prove someone wrong, wait. The next time you start to feel invisible, remember, the most powerful things on earth are unseen. Roots, pressure, time. You are not here to be loud. You are here to be effective. You are not here to perform. You are here to build. And the ones who build in silence, they don't just succeed, they last. Because in a collapsing world of noise, the ones who endure are the ones who speak less and think more. The ones who choose depth over display, substance over spectacle. The silent architect does not need applause. They're too busy designing the empire everyone else will one day live in. In the end, all showing off is a cry to be seen, to be validated, to be chosen. It's the voice of a person unsure if they're enough without the applause. People don't flaunt what they know. They flaunt what they doubt. The louder the performance, the deeper the insecurity behind it. And if you look closely, you'll start to see it everywhere. Behind every "look at me" is a silent whisper of "please don't ignore me." Behind every boast is the fear that silence means invisibility. That if no one sees you, you might cease to exist. But the truth is this: those who are truly powerful don't need the crowd. They don't seek the spotlight. They don't feed on approval, because they've built their worth in silence, and silence doesn't lie. There's a stillness that lives in real confidence. It doesn't rush to explain. It doesn't fear being overlooked. It doesn't announce its presence. It just is. And that's what makes it unshakable. In a world where everyone is screaming, the whisper becomes magnetic. In a world that rewards display, invisibility becomes strategy. In a culture where everyone competes to be seen, the most sovereign act is to not need to be. You don't need to prove yourself to people who don't even understand what they're looking at. You don't need to explain your moves to a crowd that's only there for entertainment. You don't need to be liked by those who would turn on you the moment your shine makes them squint. So ask yourself, do you want to be liked or do you want to last? Because those are not the same path. One burns fast and bright, the other builds slow and silent. One is a performance, the other is a legacy. And in the end, the loudest voices fade the quickest. But the quiet ones, the ones who moved in shadows, who built in silence, who let their work echo louder than their words, they're the ones who remain. So the next time you feel the urge to show off, remember this: the loudest aren't the most powerful, they're just the most visible, and visibility is vulnerability. In the end, those who last aren't the ones who scream for attention, they're the ones who move in silence, build in private, and strike with precision. Because as Machiavelli warned, showing off might just be the worst thing you can do. If this made you think, if it challenged the way you see power, people, and yourself, leave a comment. I'd love to hear how you see this playing out in your own life. And if you want more videos that cut deeper than motivation, subscribe like if you felt this. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Silence is strategy, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is listen.